and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. As Europe grapples with growing migration pressures, German Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt has convened his counterparts from France, Poland, Austria, Denmark and the Czech Republic, along with EU Commissioner Magnus Brunner, to propose stricter asylum reforms. From a symbolic meeting atop Germany's highest peak, ministers called for sealed external borders, tougher deportation policies. Joining us is Professor Loren Landau of the University of Oxford, a leading expert on migration and development, to unpack the implications of those shifting European asylum strategies. Professor, welcome to TVP World, and thank you very much for taking the time.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
You're welcome, sir. So it sounds as though there's a will amongst the countries I've just mentioned at this meeting to tighten up asylum laws, deportation and so on. Too little too late, Professor, isn't it?
Well, I guess there's the question of what problem you think they're trying to solve. And what we've seen actually over the last few years is that immigration, uncontrolled, irregular, unregulated immigration to Europe has been declining. I think the real challenge that they're trying to face is an electoral challenge, a challenge within Europe, the challenge of the far right. And there we might ask, is it too late? Has the far right already reframed the migration issue in such a way that it has become a threat to the continent's, to the region's democratic values? I don't think that it's too late to try to find new ways of managing migration, but the cat may already be out of the bag for the far-right politics that I think that's what's really scaring them.
But we're not talking about migration, are we? So we're talking about illegal entrants into Europe who, once they're into the Schengen area, can move freely. And so in that sense, it's a slightly different issue to legal migration. And that's been, this illegal migration has been going on for well over a decade now. Shouldn't they have done something to tighten up border controls before now?
Well, if you look after 2015, Angela Merkel very famously said, we can do it. We can take, particularly at that time, Syrian refugees. You saw African refugees. You saw people coming from Iran, from Afghanistan. Since that time, however, there's been dramatic moves. Europe has spent billions, almost trillions of euros trying to control migration, partnering with countries in North Africa, in the Middle East, to stop migration, upping deportations and patrols. And clearly it has not stopped migration. So the question is, when we say to do more, what exactly that more is going to look like?
Understood. I have a short video that I'd like to share with you and our audience, and after that, I'll come back to you for comment, Professor.
The signal that we wanted to give and that we're giving through this conference, through this summit, is very simple. We want to be tougher on illegal immigration, and we want to drastically reduce illegal immigration. We have therefore addressed many issues. I don't want to repeat the points Alexander made a few moments ago. Quite simply, when you want to control flows, you have to control both entry, i.e. the external borders, and you also have to control returns and exits. On the external borders, we will soon have a tool that will be important with the Migration and Asylum Pact. We can make it firmer, but it will provide us with instruments that will enable us to better support and sustain the effort at our external borders.
Now, that was France's Interior Minister, Monsieur Bruno Retailleau. You heard what he had to say, Professor. Your thoughts?
Well, I think we are seeing definitely a kind of formalization, an agreement across Europe. Even the UK has been involved and signed a pact with Germany and France over the last week or two. So I see that there is a strengthening of a new kind of migration management order. The thing is, of course, Europe needs migration, and the fastest way to reduce illegal immigration is to create pathways for people to migrate legally. That's what they haven't decided to do. Instead, they're relying more and more on security, more and more on sort of arms and deals to try to stop people from coming and trying to address root causes. I think what we're likely to see as a result of this is not a big reduction in the people coming, but more human rights abuses, more violence in North Africa, more exploitation and trafficking, and the kind of deportation deals that the United States has just signed, where they're sending people to third countries to be detained outside of Europe.
Yes, but the UK tried that. The UK has tried that, Professor, without much success, and it does come up against European human rights legislation even though it's not in the EU any longer. What options are there? I mean, it's one thing talking about deportations; it's another thing actually getting it done, isn't it?
Well, I think what we've started to see is that Europe is pushing its borders further into the Mediterranean and further into the east, so that if they can be intercepted before they arrive in European territory, whether it's engaging with the Libyan Coast Guard or others outside of the EU, the Turkish government, that is the way that they were going to manage this, to try to stop people from even making it in. Yes, it may be difficult with European Union rights standards to deport people to Swaziland or to other countries, as the US is doing. But I think there will be a range of deportation facilities and detention facilities surrounding Europe that will increasingly be relied on to try to stop people from coming in.
Understood. Now, the thing is, this, as I said, has been going on for well over a decade now, with certainly southern Europe bearing the brunt of people coming in on boats, many of them completely without documents. So it's a security risk as well, isn't it, for Europe?
There's always the possibility of security risks when people are moving and if you don't know who they are. But we haven't seen any kind of increase of terrorism or violence associated with these people per se. Of course, if people are in the countries, if they're marginalized, they may be turned to petty crime. But if you're trying to fight terrorism, if you're trying to fight trafficking, if you're trying to fight the kind of crimes that really do a disservice to Europe and to its people, you don't fight those through immigration controls. Those are things that you address through intelligence, through infiltrating these networks, and through careful investigation. A kind of blanket border control would drive these processes underground and can, in fact, make it harder to address them.
Understood. Now, zooming out a little bit, it seems as though the principle of the Schengen zone is evolving. How do you see the whole picture with regard to illegal immigration into Europe after the recommendations of this summit have been implemented?
Well, it's hard to know. I mean, already we've started to see threats to the Schengen system, with various European countries raising the possibility of internal borders, of additional checks. Will this sort of stave Schengen by protecting the external borders? It's hard to know. I think what this will do is help appease certain people, certain interests within Europe, which might take some of the pressure off European politicians so that they can continue the project of European integration. Right now, the specter of mass immigration, undocumented migration, is really getting in the way of trying to solve some of the substantial economic and other political issues that Europe needs to address.
Understood. So, but we have to get this sorted out first. Poland is currently facing that problem, has been for a number of months. Illegal or migrants being brought over through Russia and Belarus to the Polish borders. And this is this is clearly something that has to be addressed quickly before countries can focus on other things. Now, I'd like to focus on the UK for a second, if I may. They were represented at this summit. You're, of course, based there. There is a challenge there, especially with people coming across the Channel from France. What's the latest situation with regard to those migrants? Has that flow ebbed, or is it increasing?
I think we've seen a slight decrease, as far as I know. The numbers, of course, are seasonal. They tend to go up in the summer when the conditions are more amenable to crossing oceans. But I think what we started to see is kind of agreement between the UK and France. They're calling it one in, one out. So if someone arrives from France, not usually a French person, but someone passing through France, the UK has an arrangement now to send someone back to Europe. And so this is intended to act as a disincentive to people. They will be strengthening the borders both on the French side and the UK side. And this is perhaps the model that they intend to use across the European Union.
Okay, now we've talked about the source of many of these migrants, but there are transit countries through which they travel. Is there something that can and should be done to choke that flow? How do they get through these countries? They must have some facilitation available to them.
Well, I think that once they come in, and we've seen that in southern Italy, Greece, of course, Poland, as you mentioned before, a lot of these countries are not the destination countries. People are trying to get to France, they're trying to get to Germany, or even to the United Kingdom. And I think the question is whether countries like Greece or Italy are being adequately supported so that these people might intend to stay there or have the resources. Right now, the incentives are for those countries to try to pass on those people to the wealthier countries elsewhere because they don't want to stay in Italy, they don't want to stay in Greece. Many of them may not want to stay in Poland. And so, of course, it's in the interest of those countries that they go to Germany, that they go to France, so that France and Germany can deal with it. I think there does need to be an agreement, but there needs to be an agreement that also respects the rights of those people if they are seeking asylum, and even if they are undocumented, so that they are not detained indefinitely in these places, that they can have a hearing, and if they need to be deported, that can be done in a humane manner.
Understood. Now, how would you assess the social impact of these illegal migrants in society generally across Europe? But I expect that you're more familiar with the UK example. What's your view on that?
Well, I think what we've heard from the German minister is that integration is not happening. He's sort of a jab at Merkel, his predecessor, one of his predecessors, who said that they could absorb these people into German society. The UK has had a similar reaction. I think France for a long time has struggled with how is it going to become a multicultural, multi-religious, multilingual society. The issue is that these problems cannot go away. Europe needs migration. If you look at the map, Europe is a declining population in terms of most of Europe, in terms of its birth rates. So it will continue to need immigration, ideally creating pathways that those people can come legally. But these questions of integration, of multilingualism, of multiple religions are not going to go away. They're difficult issues, but there are issues that will need to be discussed openly so that we can chart a different future that is not so contentious and potentially so hostile to people who are in the minority.
Understood. Professor, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much for sharing your views with our audience today. Have a good day, sir.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, though. Lots more coming up. Goodbye.